Welcome everyone to my how-to video on creating the visual design for your SWOT reports. So this is just a basic introduction to some basic visual design skills. It's nothing too in-depth, just some quick tips that should help you get started. And so the overall concept I want you to keep in mind throughout this is called 3-30-3. And basically what this tells us is that a document like a SWOT report that is being created by a consulting group outside of the business, you have a job to motivate your reader to read your document, convince them that it's quality work, and then get them to say yes. So in the first 3 seconds of you handing this document to someone or them opening a file, you have 3 seconds just based off of what it looks like and some key words that have extra contrast added to them to draw their attention to the text and motivate them to want to read it. And so this would be things like anything that uses contrast or extra proximity around it, any focal points that draws the eye. And so not only does that visual design need to draw the eye to some key points on the page, but those key points need to be based on what our audience values most. Because if you're drawing their eye to a word that they don't care about, they're not going to be interested in reading the rest of the page. So that's basically the idea of the first 3 seconds, and that's mostly what this video is going to be focusing on. So if you've done your job right in that first 3 seconds, they then are interested in reading, and then they'll start reading. So then once they start reading, you have about 30 seconds to convince them that your ideas are worthwhile to them. And what that means is that it's information that they don't already have. It's ideas they couldn't have thought of on their own or haven't already thought of. And you are talking about topics that they care about, that they value. And so if you're able to do that, they will be interested in reading further and thinking in more depth about what you're saying. And so this is these first 30 seconds, this is why we have things like an introduction or an executive summary, because it helps highlight the key points of your paper. They get an overview of everything you're going to cover, and they're able to judge whether those topics are of interest to them, whether it's something they already know about or not. Okay? So let's say you've done your job at this point. They're interested, you have valuable ideas, then you have 3 minutes of further reading to get them to say yes. And so this is the point where your evidence has to be extremely effective in proving your arguments, and you can't leave any arguments out necessary to draw them to your conclusion. So in the SWOT report, you're trying to get them to adopt your recommendation. Not necessarily because you'll benefit from it, but because if you believe in your work and your research, you honestly believe that your recommendation is the next best step for this business to help them grow and improve. Okay, and so that's the 3-30-3 rule. But getting them to say yes will never happen if they don't feel motivated in the first 3 seconds to read your paper at all, because no one has to read your work in the business world. All right, so to help us talk about those 3 seconds, I'm going to have you take a look at a couple of our examples that you probably have already looked at once. So we're over here in our course middle, and if you scroll down, click on week 5. And down here in the middle is a couple of PDF examples. So we're going to be looking at these 2 SWOT report examples. So I'm going to start with the Dear 72 one. Okay. So as you can see, oops, in the first 30 seconds of looking at this, my eye is immediately drawn to this giant icon because the contrast is so different from the white of the page. So this is the icon for the business that this report is about, which is fine. It would definitely be appropriate to do that if this was an internal SWOT report, so if it was being written by people who work for Dear 72, but we don't work for Dear 72. We work for Mega Consulting Group, and so we are writing the SWOT report as a consulting task that we were hired to do. So instead of having the icon of the business the SWOT report is about, you should have the icon that represents our employer, Mega Consulting Group. because what this also does is advertise us, right? So if your SWOT report's written really well, we want them to remember who we are. So I'm going to replace this with the Mega Consulting Group letterhead. And to find that, we need to go to the assignment prompt for 7009. So still under week 5, you can click on 7009 in the overview here. This page will pop up. This is our assignment prompt. Here is the email from Alex assigning us to do the SWOT. And under item number 3, if you click on the word this, it will open up this page in the wiki with the image of our letterhead. So don't copy and paste it. It can copy and paste kind of weird sometimes. Save it as an image, and then you would insert it into your document as an image. So that's what I'm going to do now. Insert a picture. And here it is in my file folder. Okay, so there's our letterhead. And so it doesn't look right where it is, so I'm just going to click and drag it to the very top. Okay, and then basically I would want to design my page around this. Okay, this looks okay, but I don't know if I like all of this white space, so I would play around with that. The other thing that we can do is I'm going to create a small icon that I want to place in the footer of each page. So notice that I have Mega Consulting Group here in the bottom. That's okay, but I want to put our icon instead because icons are more easily recognizable. They're visual. So I'm just going to paste a copy of this. Oops, wrong thing. Copy and paste. Here we go. Okay, and if you click on this image and click on Format, you can find this crop tool. And I'm just going to crop this down. Now there's going to be a line left over on the bottom, and in another program I would probably try to get rid of it, but for this demonstration I'm just going to leave it as is. Okay, and there we have a tiny little icon that I am going to cut and paste into the bottom of our page. And there we go. We have this little visual reminder at the bottom of each page that this SWOT report was written by Mega Consulting Group. Great. Okay, so the next thing I want you to look at is the difference between this example and the visual design of the other example. So notice that in Dear 72 example, you have all of these section headings. And these are great focal points. So the introduction, strengths, so on and so forth. And notice that in addition to the contrast, so each section heading is a different font. It's larger than the rest of the font. And right before it, there's extra white space between each section than the white space between paragraphs within a section. So what this does for, so this added contrast and extra space between sections, it helps create focal points, areas where our eye is naturally drawn. And so this allows your reader to quickly find the section they're most interested in. And this extra proximity, this extra space between paragraphs and between sections also helps break up the monotony of the text. So your reader doesn't feel so overwhelmed looking at it and would feel less overwhelmed at the idea of reading it. So now I want to take us over to our other example so that you can see the difference. Okay, so this is the milk tea house example, and you can already see a big difference between the visual design. So we still have a title page, but they also have a table of contents. So at minimum, you should definitely have a title page. Your title page should have the Mega Consulting icon somewhere employed into your title page. Now, if your SWOT report goes beyond 3 pages single space, so starting at the introduction here, and if it goes on for 3 pages or more, you need a table of contents. And so here's an example of that. So if you have a table of contents, here is the topic on the left, and then on the right is the page number, which means you have to have page numbers or it renders the table of contents pointless. And so you see at the bottom of the page, here is our page numbers divided by a nice little light blue line. Also notice that this example has a color scheme of this light blue. So all of the banners at the top of the page is in this light blue. So here's the banner again. And so this one repeats also the business this is about, whereas you could do that on, say, one side and then put the Mega Consulting image over here, maybe, just so that we remind our viewer that we wrote this, but we wrote it specifically for them. Okay, so our subsection headings are also in this light blue color. So that's something else that is different here. So this example has section headings, but it also has subsection headings. So whatever the topic of the paragraph is, that is what the subsection heading is. And so this is a great advertisement for the content of your paragraph. So if I'm scanning through this in the first 3 seconds, and then I see a topic, oh, product obscurity. That sounds scary. So I want to know more about that because that sounds like it could be harmful to my business. This becomes an advertisement. Not only does it allow your reader to find the content they're looking for, but it draws attention to a topic they may not have known existed. And so I would have never known that product obscurity was one of our topics just by scanning at it without this subsection heading. Okay, so I think that's a great use of visual design. It advertises your section. Another thing, another visual design concept that allows you to advertise your section is having a chart or graph. And so notice here you have these are risk assessment matrices, and very colorful, so it immediately draws the eye. And if these topics within the matrix or within the chart or graph are valued by your reader, they would automatically be motivated to read this page, because you want to place a chart or graph on the page in which you talk about it. You wouldn't just insert this chart anywhere, and you wouldn't want to just insert the chart and not talk about it. So this page talks about the risk assessment. This risk assessment matrix, this visual chart, acts as an advertisement for this page, and your reader might stop scanning and stop to read this page. And that's what we want them to do. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a quick tip on how to incorporate charts and graphs as a visual element. So charts and graphs are a great tool to use if you are reporting numbers, especially any primary research that you've collected yourself. So for example, price and menu. Let's say I want to compare our business's price to our competitors and show that our prices are much better. And I've collected primary data based off of the menus from these competitors and our business to represent that. But I want to create a chart. Well, Word has these very easy charts and graphs. You just go to Insert, Chart, and it has a whole bunch of styles. And you can pick the kind that you want. So these are different types of charts or graphs. And even within the different types, there are different styles. So I'm going to pick this one because this design allows me to have category. I would replace the word category with the business. I would probably put our business first, and then our competitors where category 2, category 3, and category 4 are. And then above each category or business, I can put our 3 best-selling products and compare them by price. So that's basically the one I want to insert. And I'm just going to copy and paste this from another Word document because my computer doesn't like using the insert tool very much. Okay, so this is basically what would happen when you insert it. There wouldn't be any data points for you because you have to insert these yourself. So this is very easy to use, and if you prefer to use Excel spreadsheets or another program, that is perfectly fine. This is mainly for people who've never really had a chance to do this before. So I'm going to double click on the title so that I can change what those words are. So basically, if you can right click on it, you can change it. So I'm going to replace this. So you want the title to be very obvious of what you are showing. So I might say price comparison and then done. Okay, there it is. And so the title of your chart should immediately tell your reader what the content is about. So let's say you want to change these data points. You can do that by simply right-clicking and hit edit Data, and then you can edit it here or open it in an Excel spreadsheet. That's what I prefer to do. You can change what these categories are. You can change these numbers. You can also change what it displays. So this is a quick way to change the style without doing anything else. This will allow you, if my computer will unfreeze, this will allow you to show different elements. So if you click the plus sign, so you can show different elements if you want grid lines or not. You can take the grid lines off. Okay. In addition, if you decide that you don't like this type of chart, you can right click on it and change chart type, and it'll pop open that first window and you'll be able to change it to something else. So those are the basics. Now, regardless of whether you insert a chart or an image using one of Microsoft Word's tools or from somewhere else, you're going to run into this problem where the chart is kind of like cutting into your document. And so if you want your chart to spread the entire page, that's fine. I would probably need to increase the size of this one just a little bit. There we go. So that I didn't orphan the word milk up here. But let's say you don't want it to be that big. So I'm going to make it a little smaller. And notice all this white space. So there's all this wasted white space over here on the right-hand side. And so to fix that, we're going to do something called text wrapping. Okay. And so you can do it by just clicking this button, this icon over here on the right that looks like a rainbow. Or you can also find it under Format and Wrap Text. So either way, whichever one you click on, these are your basic options. Square and tight are probably the best. If you click on through, your text is going to go behind your chart and you're going to have a bunch of text on top of each other. So I'm going to click on tight, and there we have it. So now we have our text wrapped around our chart and it just looks much more professional. Now you want to be careful about the spacing because you don't want to leave like a really skinny area of text. Like that's too small probably. You can also decide where you want to put it. So you wouldn't want to put your chart right in the middle because then it breaks up your sentence and I'm supposed to read across the chart. That's terrible. So either put your chart all the way to the left or all the way to the right so that you're not orphaning any of the sentences. Okay, and that looks great. So now my eye is going to be drawn to this page much more than it was before. And so a good rule of thumb is having no more than 2 images per page. So if you wanted to put a stock photo in here of like what the business looks like on the inside, you could do that. You could put an image in here. But you don't want to clump it up too much because then the text is going to look like a snake and it's going to look weird. So 1 visual item per page is fine, or even 1 every other page for a SWOT report like this will be good. But you don't want to crowd it too much. Okay, so those are some basic tips for creating visual design. The last thing I want to show you are templates. So if you haven't guessed yet, the Milk Tea House example was created using a template using Microsoft Word, and the Deer 72 example was made from scratch. And you can kind of tell because to make a visual design from scratch takes a a lot of work, but you can do it. So if you want to make it from scratch, I would recommend that you at least look at some templates or look at some professional report examples and incorporate these extra focal point visual tools like this bar here, right? Instead of just having words, just having the title, you can have this filled in colored bar behind it, and it helps create some visual contrast. Okay, so if you want to start from a template, that's fine. Just go over here to File, New. You can always do a Google search or find these online as well, but you can find them within Word document by searching for Report. And then a whole bunch of templates for report will pop up once it's done thinking about it. And my program starts cooperating. Here we go. All right, so as you can see, many of them have title pages, some of them more visually appealing than others. Some of these are kinds of reports that are not going to be useful for us. So you can just pick one that you like the visual design of. The only warning I would give you about these is that it can be a little difficult to adjust the visual design. So for example, if you didn't like you know, one of the sections and you wanted to get rid of part of the visual design, it can be a little cumbersome changing the formatting. But if you want to keep it simple and you like what they do, you're welcome to start from one of these or at least use them as examples. Obviously, all of these title pages you would have to change the icon or the image on the first page to the Mega Consulting one. Okay. So that is basically sums up all of my tips. You will need to have a title page. If your SWOT is longer than 3 pages single spaced, you need a table of contents and then page numbers. You should incorporate the Mega Consulting brand into your report. Each page should have focal points, so at least having section headings that are visually contrasted and have proximity working to their advantage so that your reader's eye is drawn to them, and ways to break up the text on the page, okay, so that your reader doesn't feel overwhelmed and the eye is drawn to specific focal points on the page. Okay, I hope this video was useful, and if you have any questions or if you'd like to show me what you're working on, you can always bring that to our virtual classroom or send me an email. Good luck.